Hey guys, Mr. E here. This is a edited down version of a live tier listing or live ranking I did on stream the other night. If you already caught it live or already saw the unedited VOD, then you are good to go. You don't need to watch this again unless you really want to. But let me say this now at the beginning because I don't think I say it till 90% of the way through the actual video. You should subscribe to the channel. If you're clicking on this and you enjoy this sort of content, you would absolutely love the other stuff I have coming out for you guys. And I really appreciate the support. Remember, we're trying to hit 40,000 Warhammer 40k subs by the end of the year, and I think we can do it. So I just wanted to get this in here, and now I'll turn you over to past Mr. E. Enjoy, guys. Hi, everyone. Mr. E here. If you didn't know, it's the stream you're tuned into. Let me first get underway by explaining what we are doing today. It says tier list up here, but we are not technically tier listing. This is going to be independent of the tier list that will come at a later date. You know, maybe there'll be even more updates to these weapons in the weeks to come, but I will do a tier list for weapons since a number of them have changed a good bit at some later date. But this is talking about whether these weapons have gained or lost power relative to where they were before. So there is one weapon that is not on this list, and that is the Power Falchion, because it has simply did not exist before. And also I didn't take a screenshot of it, and I was like, oh, that's a great explainer for why it isn't here. But literally it didn't exist before, so it's not going to be on the list. Everything else had a pre-existing power level that I think we were all relatively aware of, or you're at least aware of what my opinion on its power level was, and then we're going to rank it compared to that. So a weapon that was really, really bad might go into the huge W tier for moving up a lot in power, but it doesn't mean it's going to be high overall in terms of tier listing. Like when we're actually comparing power levels of weapons. I think we know the powerful ones that are up there, but a very, very powerful weapon might have also landed itself in the oof category. So I think these categories hopefully speak for themselves. We have huge W, the absolute biggest winners of the patch, the ones that are living in the changes. It brought new life to them, and perhaps they are going to maybe not define the meta, but the off meta. Nice gains is, you know, these got sizable buffs. They are definitely usable now. You're going to see more people playing with them as a result of just being a better weapon in general. About the same, might have had some losses and some wins, or it just ended up kind of not seeing any change to its comparative power. And this could apply, remember, this could apply to a weapon that sucked before, like really sucked before, and it still sucks. That would still be about the same. Then we are doing, dang, that sucks. Like, you know, you just got nicked. You probably had some power before. You took a little bit of a hit on the chin, and now you're a little bit worse for it. And then finally, oof. There are a couple of weapons in here that just really got, like, gapped. Like, they just got completely fucked by this patch. And if you're wondering what is making these changes happen, there's two main things we have to consider, guys. For power increases, there's of course I guess there's three main things. For power increases, anything that's going to gain power, it's gaining it from one of two places. It's either gaining it from the increase to its specific power, like that weapon class or that specific weapon type got a buff targeted to it, or the increases to the power of the classes has granted it something, or it had some counter to what the enemies have started to do. So usually it's going to be one of those things. If it's taking a big L, if it's in that oof category, what has likely happened is it hasn't scaled off of that power that the classes grant it, and the changes to enemies, most notably the introduction of these 6,500 HP Carapace Armored Crushers, has really just made this weapon just not viable at all. And I want to say this again here at the beginning of this video because I feel like a lot of people will watch this video when it gets posted, and I was tired of repeating the same thing over and over in my Two Swords video. The problem with diversity in the game, I don't have a problem with there being some weapons that can beat Crushers. I have a problem with there being too few weapons that can defeat Crushers. So they either need to really increase the number of weapons that can defeat Crushers, or remove all the weapons that are just direct counter to Crushers. Because Crushers aren't like a rare treat that only occurs every once in a while. They appear in every single game, so if your build doesn't have a counter to them, you're just dead in the water, and you can't be doing that. It's just not viable, right? I like that crushers are going up in HP, but they represent a big problem for a ton of weapons because like there's a ton of weapons in the game that literally just can't do anything against them. And so those weapons, maybe that like maybe you can take your melee weapon, like whatever you want. You could choose heavy sword in your melee and then run a range weapon that counters the crusher. But how many range weapons are there that counter the crusher? Not very many. So you end up with the same situation where in one of those two slots, you're going to lose a lot of versatility. You're going to lose a lot of options. Like 90% of options are gone from you because one of your two slots needs to be something that can counter these guys. And there's so few weapons that actually do it in a timely manner. So yeah, that's my problem with the crusher. And that's going to be the big thing I'll refer to back a lot today, which is that for a lot of these weapons, if the crusher buff really hurt them, if it set them back a long way, where before it was like an inconvenient enemy to run to, but you could deal with them, and now it's just like an impossible enemy to run into, yeah, that's what's going to cause you to lose a lot of power. So with that being said, let us get underway here. Remember that we are ranking from huge W in terms of power increases over pre-patch, and then all the way down to oof in terms of power losses compared to pre-patch. And we will start with Ogrren's Bully Clubs here. You know, these weapons are not going to go down in power, that's for sure. Ogrren overall, remember he got a little bit of a nerf in this patch. So I guess we could keep that into consideration. But when you look at the overall, like, difficulty changes to the game, Bully Club is still one of the best weapons in the game. It is a very intensely, especially this one right here, the Mark 3B. This weapon is good into armor. It has high stagger values on light attacks even, and it doesn't care about the buffs to the crusher, because it'll just knock him down and then the crusher will bleed out in a couple of seconds. However, there is one more thing to consider about these weapons, which is that the nerf to batter means that solely light attack playstyles is considerably worse because you can't stack batter bleed stacks as quickly. So that's something that I'll keep Mark III Bully Club right here in the about the same category. It has seen a rise in its efficacy, or like a greater valuation in the things it can bring to the team because of those extra tanky, beefy boys that you need to stagger and put on the ground and beat them to death. But at the same time, it lost that bleed stacking it can do. However, obviously you can just heavy attack repeatedly. And then I'm going to give nice gains to this one, the Mark I Bully Club, because those heavy attack, this is a great heavy attack weapon, and heavy attack stacking 4 bleed is really good. So I'm going to give this weapon a little bit of a buff here. It went up a little bit because those 4 stacks of bleed have helped it to retain some power as compared to its lower ally. I don't think that really any of this is going to affect our the worst version of the Bully Club here, so I'm going to keep it in about the same category. I don't think that any of the changes are going to really affect anyone using this weapon, because this weapon was just so much worse than the other two. No one was using it. Yes, if you heavy attack with these weapons, you will still get the bleed. So what effectively it's done is it's just changed it so you're not just walking into enemies now and swinging M1 wildly. You start your attack on an enemy with a heavy attack. So you start them at 4 stacks of bleed, and then you'll light attack from there. And that's going to bring a lot of viability to different weapons. Oh man, oh wow, we got a great one right away. The Power Maul, the Paul, huge W for obvious reasons. This weapon is so much better than it was before. Oh man, Slap Tech. I forgot about that. Slap Tech lost. Damn. Oh, I gotta go back. Because I just saw Xena type slapping. Because the nerfs to impactful, I believe, does drop the slapping on. That's too inconsiderate, like too small though, because that only affects demon hosts, where you could slap demon hosts around. I don't think that's that big a deal. But let's go back to the Power Maul. Okay, Power Maul is insane. This is a great weapon. This thing is, I think this thing ultimately could end up being kind of problematic. This has a 10-second cooldown on a crazy ability. The fact that you can not only AoE nuke a bunch of stuff with a really high damage, by the way, like you'll hit an enemy, you'll hit like a shotgunner and it'll kill other shotgunners that are within like 10 feet of your swing. Of course, it also has stagger powerful enough to knock back a boss, which on the Ogrren, who already has his 2 like good ultimate abilities, can also stagger bosses, and his grenades can stagger bosses. So we're just entering into a CC chain like whirlwind here, and it's just a really good fit for him. The normal attacks on it honestly aren't half bad either, and the fact that this thing has such good heavy attack chains means you can make good use of the batter talent on it, and then you can do a push stab and do this flurry of blows that's super fast and get those light attacks built up. So I mean, whether or not this weapon is now like ultimate meta, I think it's definitely in competition for Ogrren's best weapons. I would rank it as better than his cleavers and stuff like that these days. I don't know if it's better than Bully Club, but it definitely is one of the biggest winners in the patch. Just for, I mean, look at where it was before, right? It can't go down from there. Well, I guess it could have, because Fat Shark has not been able to prove it so far. All right, we got the Power Sword. The Power Sword, I want to say, has seen some nice gains here. I was contemplating putting it a little bit lower because, of course, it has competition now in terms of the Power Falchion. People might be tempted to use the Power Falchion instead, but the Power Sword, and I can never tell these, you saw my spreads, I can never tell these marks apart, but Power Swords in general were always pretty high damage, especially the Mark 6, I want to say, the one that you can do the push stab attack and just insta-kill a crusher. The increases to veteran melee damage are quite absurd, and this is a really good conduit for that. And this is something that probably got cut out of the video that I was talking about beforehand with the chat, is that these weapons power is oftentimes a function of how good a conduit they are for player power, for the talent tree power. And with this update, a ton of power was invested in the talent trees of the Zealot, the Veteran, and the Psyker. And so if this weapon can turn that into effective damage really well, it's going to go up a lot. So I think that this weapon definitely goes up a lot, because now, like, it is just so much easier to hit these breakpoints, to do massive damage on those push stabs. And it, like, you know, this is a weapon that didn't really have that much of a problem. It required a little setup, sure, but like, it could dunk those crushers instantly before, and now you've got so much damage, you're still dunking on them. So the fact that it didn't get hurt by that crusher change at all means it's definitely moving up pretty nicely. On the other hand, we have our not-so-friend, but maybe one of the most maligned weapons in the game, the Axeless Combat Axe. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of combat axes here. I'm going to go oof, and where is my Rashad at? Rashad? He'll show up later. Show yourself, coward. So these axes do not have any way to penetrate armor. The Antax is one of the best unga bungas. Like, if you're a person who's playing on Uprising and Malice, just run an Antax. Light attack everything, high base attack damage, high stagger. There's not enough targets, so you're gonna get bogged down on them. You'll just chop heads all day. But the second you run into a crusher on like Heresy difficulty, you got an issue. And now when you run into a crusher, you're done. There's no way, because there's no armor penetration on this thing at all, and its heavy attacks aren't very powerful, so even with like Zealot Charge or something, you're not really getting that damage through. The Axeless has always just been a worse version of it. So both these weapons really don't like that change to the crusher. So I'm definitely going to put them in big oof category. They just had no way to deal with the armor before, but it was like tenable because they had 3600 HP, and you're like, okay, well, if I just dump everything, I can get this guy dead. Now you're not killing them. Now they're just going to sit there and they're going to beat you to death. We've got the Agni Shock Maul. How do I know the name of that? This is actually what this one is called, right? This weapon, I am going to put this into, man, first of all, I love this weapon. I don't know if you guys have noticed on streams, but I put this weapon in like so many builds. I'm gonna give it nice gains, and I want to be overly complimentary to it, but this weapon is one of the few weapons that was not hurt at all by the changes to the Crusher. It has a lot of innate rending. Like it's a mace weapon, right? So these bonks that it does, the heavy attack bonks and stuff, they aren't reduced by armor as much as a lot of other weapons. And of course, its shock prod effect is really good at just like holding, even if you can't kill the Crusher, you can paralyze them for like 5 seconds with a quick prod of this thing. So that's very valuable. And it also is one of the only weapons that has Skull Crusher for all of the human classes. So it's just a very, very valuable asset to have on the team. If you can have one person on your team who has this thing, it makes Havoc so much easier, because this thing is also the king of captain shields and like twin shields. It'll pop them in a couple of seconds. So this weapon is really good. And as far as like its power versus pre-patch, it just went up because melee damage went up, and it didn't get nerfed at all really by having those additional Crushers to fight against. So its value in the meta is going to go up as more bosses, as more high health armored targets get added. Having things like Skull Crusher and having armor pet like innate armor rending is very valuable. So it keeps its value. All right, then we got to talk about the tack axes. The tack axes are going in the dang that sucks category. The tack axes are very, very good weapons. Don't get me wrong. These are still definitely like A+ to S tier weapons. Crazy damage potential. This is the best one. This is the second best one. This is the third best. But like, these weapons were always limited. They were checked in their power by their weakness to Carapace. And so when you'd run into Carapace, that was where your secondary weapon came in. That was where your real weakness was. And you could power through them. Like I said before, you could power through them with enough gumption, with enough ultimate charges. But with this change, you're dogging on them all day. You are chopping these guys forever, and they don't have Uncanny Strike, right? So they can't do what those other weapons do. Now, if they gave you these things Uncanny Strike, it would be crazy. That would be a nutso weapon. Well, yeah, the fact that these things can't cleave armor at all has always been sort of the check on their power, that they're low damage. But with Carapace, they're doing like single-digit damage, which is nuts. So yeah, that really sucks for them. But, overall, this weapon it's going to be stronger in like 90% of gameplay. It's just that when you hit those Crushers, you're just going to hit a brick wall these days. All right, we got to talk the pickaxes. I think the pickaxes feel about the same to me. I played with one on the test server to see how different the stagger changes to heavy hitter and all that stuff were. Pickaxes, they don't tend to get a whole lot of their damage from batter, so they're kind of independent of that change, because pickaxes, especially like Branks and Borovian, the ones that hit really hard in big single hits, they weren't really all that invested in the bleed stacks from batter. That's not how they dealt their damage. They dealt their damage up front. When you hit with this weapon, it does 1,000, 2,000 damage just flat. You don't need the extra bleed stacks for a couple hundred damage. So they don't really care about the changes to batter. They care moderately about the changes to heavy hitter, but I feel like those heavy hitter changes were so mild that it really doesn't affect much. Like, for instance, Great Cleaver is probably the node that many people were choosing with these pickaxes, and Great Cleaver only got reduced by about like 1/6 or like 25% or something, or maybe it was even like 1/8. Like, it's still an absurd amount of cleave that any other class would blush to have on their talent tree as a single node. So yeah, it's not going to really hurt their overall power potential. They can still operate in exactly the same way. Yeah, so that's sort of what I feel about those pickaxes. Is the third one here somewhere? I don't know. I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. So they're all about the same, because the Ogrren kind of barely changed, right? Okay, Arbites Shock Maul. Wow, this. So I won't rank this based on. First of all, I haven't tested. Can anyone confirm if the bug with the Arbites Shock Maul, the perma shock thing, still works or not? Because if it does, then we're definitely staying about the same or going up. But otherwise, this weapon is just golden. I mean, it's still super solid. It has innate armor rending. It's easily one of the best weapons of the game. This thing, honestly, this gives a dueling sword a run for its money in terms of like which weapon is more imbalanced. Because this one has the stagger values and the attack speed and the innate armor penetration where it doesn't even need to have the it still works awesome. It doesn't even need to have Uncanny Strike. It doesn't even need to have some of these crazy zealot buffs and stuff. And of course it's on the Arbites as a class, so it's doing pretty good there. I would say that this weapon is still probably just about the same in terms of power level. The Crusher health buff doesn't really help it. It's not like it's going to be more chosen because you need more ways to counter Crushers, because it's just the weapon everyone's choosing on Arbites already, and it's not like it's going to be less chosen as a result of the Crushers are just too hard for it to kill or anything. So it stays about the same. Same thing applies to the shield here. Actually, I'm gonna give this a nice gains here for Arbites users. The shield is actually kind of fucking useful because plasma gunners, which is a thing I haven't brought up yet, and it's a video that I guess I'll put out when I'm finished talking about this. I recorded it and I forgot to actually make a thumbnail for it and stuff, but plasma gunners are fucking bullshit, right? And being able to block them and stop them from killing you is amazing and can change the game. The shield is one of very few weapons that can do that, and it takes almost no stamina to block them at all. So you just hold it down and walk towards them, and that's one of the only counters there is to it. Because, like, you know, you can be in Arbites all day, but you can still get 2 or 3 shot by plasma gunners who are just chaining back to back, and it's still bullshit. So yeah, the ability just to block is very valuable, and this weapon was never weak, like, at all. This weapon is 90% of the power of the Arbites shock maul, but like that last 10% has been turned into utility, and that utility just went up a lot in value with the introduction of an enemy that's actually like super like crazy scary at range. So I definitely, and this one also, when you're charging as Arbites now, you count as blocking when you're using your I forget what the hold the line ability, so you actually can now block range attacks while you're charging if you have the shield. So that's pretty cool too. Okay, Electro Staff in the oof category. This thing has been beleaguered for so long, and the changes to Crushers just absolutely fucked this thing. That again was the enemy that like it really couldn't deal with. This thing has peril generation problems, and it does fine. Like flak and stuff like that just explodes instantly. It does thousands of damage. But put a little bit of armor on the enemies, and it does nothing. It literally does nothing. So you run up against a Crusher, and you're like, okay, so I literally can't kill you with this. And yeah, like granted, the Psyker got a lot of buffs, but the ability of this weapon to cut through every enemy was not raised proportionally to the power of the Psyker going up. There's a lot of like pretty much every other staff on the Psyker got huge increases like from these stat buffs, because like there was things that used to be 15% to non-warp damage that are now warp damage. There's just 20% rending in the bottom of the tree for warp damage now. Like there are tons of buffs to staves. This one just doesn't translate that into power at all in any way, shape, or form, and it really sucks. So yeah, I really want this to be good. Like this is the coolest staff aesthetically, and like it feels so cool. When this staff was like originally in the meta, and you know everyone was playing on like Damnation, that was the hardest difficulty. This staff was so cool. But Electro is just fucked now because yeah, it runs against one hard target and it's done. Oh wait, right, there's 2 models. I forgot there's 2 models to the shield. So this one also gets nice gains for the Arbites. Recon lasgun. Recon lasguns going in dang that sucks tier. And this is one that I realized very early on when I was how's the music volume level, guys? This track is a little bit louder than the last one. When I realized very early on when I was looking at the talent tree for the veteran, this weapon, previously, the way you ran this weapon, right, is you ran Shock Trooper for next to infinite ammo, which is great, and then you ran with the Onslaught talent, which is all the way on the right side of the tree, pretty far down. What they did in this patch was they added one additional buffer node before each of those talents. So you have to go one node further down in that left tree over Marksman's Focus and one node further down in Weapon Specialist in order to get both of those talents at the same time. The thing that was pretty much enabling the Recon lasgun to do what it needs to do to Crushers, which are the only antagonists of the weapon, more or less. Everything else dies. It loves melting through unyielding flesh. It loves flak armored enemies. No problem with any of that. But Crushers and Carapace in general were a hard counter to it. But you take Onslaught and you get apply 40% brittleness in like 1 second, and now you're talking. But now it gets extra hard. It's a point tax in order to take both of those, and it really limits your options because the node that you really want to take with it is Focus Target, and you can just barely reach all 3 of those, and then you're missing a ton of other good nodes in the tree as well that could really up your damage if you want to take all 3. So yeah, I just think it sucks for him because they clearly saw that happening and were like, okay, that's too good. Like, this is supposed to be a weapon that fires like light attack projectile rounds and can like spam enemies down, not a weapon that can pierce armor. And so, I mean, I think that's a fair and justified nerf. The problem is they left a bunch of other stuff in existence that just pierces armor no problem, and they hit this guy. The less ammo and magazine, I swear they were saying something about this, by the way. There is a thing people have noticed where like pretty much every weapon or like every recon gun, or actually it's just every lasgun, right, has less ammo overall in their magazines. I don't know if that's going to be a permanent change or not. I don't think ultimately it really hurts the recons because they have such massive like ammo pools as it is, and such massive magazines, plus you take into the fact that Shock Trooper extends your magazine effectively by the percentage of, or the inverse of the percentage of the crit chance that you have. So yeah, that's quite nice. The Recon lasgun, I can't remember, I can't tell from the pictures because these pictures are so crushed down, or so cut off the sides. Is this the 12? I don't know. The fast firing one lost the most. The slowest firing one probably stayed the closest to the same because it has more penetration in it. So yeah, we'll kind of, but I think all of them kind of fall into that dang that sucks category just because they lost that easy free interaction. Even if it's just a slight nerf, it is still a nerf. Yeah, this one's the slow and this one's the fast. That's what I thought. Okay, the shovels for the Ogrren. These are gonna stay about the same. I don't think that the changes to the Crusher really help them or hurt them in terms of the meta. The Ogrren lost a little, like a tiny fraction of his damage overall in his talent tree, but I don't think it's enough to really shift where the shovels are. So I'm gonna leave them about the same. I don't think that they are gonna be really effective, because remember that they have pretty decent ability to penetrate that armor, so the increase in health isn't gonna affect them too much. Yeah, you might go from like one-shotting to two-shotting them, but I don't think that's a huge thing, considering that's like across the term. Shovels are great, okay? The Ogrren shovels are good, but like they just aren't affected by this by the changes to Ogrren in this way, and they aren't really affected by the changes to Crushers. Cleavers, on the other hand, that sucks, because Cleavers, the problem for Cleavers has always been that they cannot get through armor, right? They'll melt. They have like really high DPS, like cleaving into tons of other stuff. They've got like little punch stab combos and stuff with the Mark IV Cleaver, whereas with the little jagged thingy. I don't know if it's in here. There we go. But the Crusher change really fucks these guys, and you just have no DPS, no effective way to DPS against them. I've watched Ogrens on stream, like I've watched shoot, man, I'm blanking on his name, and if he watches this, he's gonna be offended. But I've watched several Ogrren players on stream going into Havoc, running up against a Crusher, and it's like, yeah, you can stun lock him with punches and stuff, but you're there all day, just like, and it's just like, damn. Oh, and I forgot about, so yeah, they quote unquote fixed crunch. They fixed crunch someone relayed this to me earlier. In the same way that they fixed Zealot double stab and they fixed pre or post revving the chain when you are already latched on an enemy with charge. Yeah, so like the crunch change does hurt that stuff. I don't know if I want to consider that in the balance because that was unintended, I guess. Like in the same way that I wouldn't really consider it a up or down to Arbites shock maul if they fix the bug, the bug with it, the perma shock. If they change that, I wouldn't really consider it. But since it's a bug fix, I don't know. I'm not gonna, when I go in to talk about like Dagger or something, I'm not gonna say, well, oh yeah, you could double stab before with Shroud Field and now you can't. I don't think that's what I want to rank it on. So I'll just leave that to the side. You can hear the dog. Okay, so with that being said, yeah, well, let's leave those there. And we did cleavers. Okay, now, oh boy, we get to talk chain swords. These feel so good now. I actually really love these. Let's see. Man, it is so hard to tell with these tiny little pictures. Here's our Eviscerator. Here's our Eviscerator. So these are our two Eviscerators. Here is... I always mess this up. This one's a duplicate. Okay, I have duplicates in my files. So this one's a duplicate. Okay, these all get massive W's. The changes to chain swords, especially the fact that chain swords are now one of few weapons that can really they still deal with armor pretty dang well, especially if you're playing Zealot and they can latch into that armor and really rip through it. They can still convey a ton of damage to crushers. The changes to the damage, the way the damage is dealt with these weapons as well, makes them so much better. Previously, when you revved the chain, you had to latch into an enemy. Say you had like a bulwark in front of you, right? You get around behind the bulwark and you latch into him. But previously, it was like an exponential curve. It would start really low and it ramp up, and the last 2 ticks would do most of the damage. Now, immediately you start doing a ton of damage as soon as that chain starts going because they don't have any armor. And they also increase the damage overall of the ripping animation, or the ripping special. So that just won out hugely. And the quality of life stuff with the less stickiness, where you're not getting latched into enemies past where the animation should be done. You can pull, and someone's gonna make a pun, but you can pull out really easily with these weapons. You can tap, you can literally rev the engine, tap an enemy and pull away instantly, and you immediately apply 16 bleed stacks to them, which is crazy. This combined with just flat damage buffs to a ton of classes in melee is conveyed very, very easily into both the shred damage and the straight up damage. And of course, these single-handed, one-handed chainsword, the assault chainswords, they just got a straight stat buff too. Like they just got a straight up stat buff. So these are some of the biggest winners of the patch just because they got buffs from the talent tree, quality life, and straight stat buffs all together. So they are loving life right now. On the other hand, we have the Catachan Devil's Claw swords, which are suffering. I know that these are, there's some of the only weapons that have Skull Crusher, so there's that for them. But damn, the changes to Crushers make them dead. They cannot exist in a sphere with the health quotas that Crushers currently have. That was previously the thing, is like, you'd see clips of like really talented players who were soloing massive hordes, who were running around and like, just backpedaling and dodging and then making these perfect block counters on like Ragers and cutting their heads off and stuff. And then they changed it so that Ragers have Carapace chest, or like the Scab Ragers, and that hurt them a little bit. And then they buffed Crushers to have 6,500 HP. There is literally almost no way you can do anything with these swords now because they just dink off of armor. They do 0 damage to armor. So you're going to have to run a ranged weapon that can deal with armor instead. And as we addressed prior to this, there are very, very few ranged options that can deal with Crushers like effectively at all. It's pretty much just the bolter on every class that has access to it. And yeah, and like, what if you're Psyker, right? Like, Psyker can't run this sword because stabs aren't really that good against armor. And so, yeah, you can't play this on Psyker at all. So yeah, this thing really just took a big L with this patch. Daggers, on the other hand, I am gonna go huge W for Dagger players, specifically because the Zealot and stealthing and that sort of stuff has seen such a huge buff. Daggers have an innate 20% backstab damage it's a hidden stat on them, and they have just turbo buffed the backstab playstyle with the changes to Shroudfield having not only, you know, the 5-second duration, but now a 5-second window where enemies just won't even pay attention to you and you can walk around behind them and stab in the back. Yeah, you're talking like just free time for daggers to do what they do best, and these weapons are really loving that change. Of course, there's tons of flat damage. You know, critical builds barely took any change at all, and these weapons are some of the most consistent in the game at getting crits, at maintaining a high crit rate, and so therefore they can sustain as much cooldown as you can on Zealot, or you could go into the Martyrdom route and get a ton of boosted damage. I mean, these things really excel with all the changes to Zealots. They also, I mean, they're just good weapons in general. They've always been like just behind the dueling swords. Of course, they have Uncanny Strike, which, you know, I suppose shouldn't go without mention, considering it's a video about, you know, weapon balance and stuff. But the fact that they have Uncanny Strike means the one thing that could potentially hold back a weapon from like ascending in this patch, the change to Crushers and just completely getting cock blocked by Crushers, is negated, because they can just deal the damage directly to them. So yeah, these things are way better than they were before. I mean, not way better, but like they definitely got a big buff out of the changes to these classes, and they're some of the most competitive weapons out there. If you missed it, the reason the shields are getting some nice gains is because they can block plasma gunners, and now you count as blocking while you're charging. And blocking plasma gunners is one of the more useful things you can do when it's like the only thing that can kill you on Arbites these days. We've got the Squints and Screen Force Greatsword? Is this a Force Greatsword? Or is this a Relic Blade? I can't tell. This is a Relic Blade. Yeah, this is a Relic Blade right here. This looks like it may be a Force Greatsword. Where's the other one? That's an Obscurus? No, that's an Obscurus. No, this is an Elise. God damn it. Yes. Oh, I gotta lean in. These are two Relic Blades. Okay, there we go. I can see it. Okay, Force Great Swords. Nice gains. Nice gains for these guys. Not huge W, because the Crusher changes do hurt Force Great Swords a little bit. That's their struggle enemy. But they do okay damage versus Crushers. These weapons got a big boost from the amount of just general... Actually, you know, honestly, melee Psychers are so much better than it was before. Scryers went up. Of course, there's a bunch of new archetype nodes in the tree for specifically melee Psyker. I gotta give them the bigger of the two W's, right? These weapons really take everything that the Psyker has been given and run with it. Yes, they're held back a little bit by the changes to Crushers, by making them like that much more tanky. But yeah, once you're charged up, you can do quite a bit of damage to Crushers. Crits, of course, do a lot of damage to Crushers directly. And of these weapons, also, like, you know, uncharged Wind Slash or whatever it's called can open up a Bulwark Shield. Like, these weapons have always been on that cusp of being good, but they were held back by the fact that Scryers is so frail, or was so frail. Now, with the fact that you can extend Scryers effectively infinitely, like your Scryers durations are like 45 seconds now easily in combat, thanks to all the different ways you can drop Peril. And then you've got 20% damage reduction plus a trickle of toughness coming in all the time. And they just buffed, you know, just stamina and stuff across the board for Psyker, and just his general like stat line is better. So yeah, they just win in all those categories. They got a ton of, no buffs to them specifically, but a ton of buffs to melee Psyker archetypes. And they've rode off the back of that. For Relic Blades, I'm gonna give them a nice gains category here. Of course, the Zealot went up in terms of its general power level, right? Just the amount of damage that it can do. The reason the Relic Blades were less used before was because crit meta was like the only way to do anything. And cooldown crit meta was like it. If you weren't running crit, you weren't using Invocation of Death. And if you weren't using Invocation of Death, you weren't effectively getting your ultimate off of cooldown. And that was a big, like, encumbering factor. Now you can use Relic Blade with any ability. You can use it with Stealth, you can use it with Charge, and you can even use it with Chorus, because Chorus, its best way to replenish its cooldown is independent. You can just run Martyrdom and have 50% increased cooldown with no problem. So these weapons love the changes to Martyrdom. These are some of the, like, two-handed Zealot weapons are some of the absolute biggest. Oh yeah, 100% cleave on peril. The changes, to go back to these, the changes to the tree where it brought that melee wing of the Psyker node back closer to the center so that everybody can access it for 1 or 2 points is a massive quality of life improvement. Okay, so these Relic Blades, to go back to them, the increases to base damage, the increases to cleaving damage is a new node in the tree that increases cleave and damage. Just the overall Zealot, like the Martyrdom meta that I expect to see evolve, like that percentage increase to attack speed and damage is massive for these weapons, because it really counters the one thing that slows them down. And then there's another node that specifically counters the one thing that literally slows them down, because now you can move while you're holding down heavy attacks, which makes them feel so much better to use. It's a node you don't have to take because you can slide through that and avoid most of the slowdown animation, but taking it is just such a huge quality of life. So I think they definitely got some very nice gains out of the patch. We have got Vigilant Autoguns. Oh, and by the way, guys, as far as Mr. E, subbing to Mr. E, definitely a huge W with this patch. You know, being able to actually have new content for once in like every 3 months. It's the time to watch Mr. E because he actually has things to talk about. What do you know? It's shocking. Okay, we've got Vigilant Autoguns, guys. Huge W's for Vigilant Autoguns. Wow, I never thought I would live to see the day. Literally, I thought that I would die before they ever changed the Vigilant Autoguns. I thought that this was just going to be the thing they were like, yeah, fuck these things. We're done. We're not even going to try. They're just so fucked. So what has changed for Vigilant Autoguns? This is the last one. What has changed for Vigilant Autoguns is a lot. Vigilant Autoguns have been increased in base damage, lowered in their headshot ratios. Their crit damage is, as you say, terrible now, but the quote-unquote terrible headshot ratio is still tons. It's still really big, and they are way less reliant on hitting headshots to do their damage. So like you can miss and hit the body and you'll still be able to kill the target, and that's overall that's a big damage increase. Their base damage almost makes up for it, and of course, like, their headshot damage before was just generally overkill on most enemies, because these weapons sucked before and they still suck at killing Carapace. You are not going to kill a Mauler. Well, actually you can by shooting him in the body now, but you're not going to kill a Crusher with this thing to save your life. Literally, it'll come and kill you before you kill it with this weapon. So yeah, it's still going to suck into Crushers, but it already sucked into Crushers, so that's not really bringing it down anymore. But the changes to just making it more usable like that, and of course that massive nerf to the recoil and just the overall like horrible feel of using these weapons before was just the worst. This is supposed to be a DMR that's firing like high damage, high caliber rounds. It felt like you were shooting 9mm at people in the chest, and then if you got a crit headshot, it would actually kill them. But if you missed or hit them in the body, it did nothing. And it was so hard to actually get a headshot because the stability is all fucked. The thing that's really holding these weapons back now is lack of a sight. They really have like the worst sights in the game. I think that probably that is related to something to do with the licensing, and like GW doesn't want them putting out models that don't exist on the tabletop, because then it's like, you know, kind of this gray area. But it just is really annoying. If I was going to play with these weapons and I like to use the weapon customization mod, I would 100% do that immediately, because these weapons and the Hellbores would benefit from that greatly. These weapons also got a really big buff in that they are headhunter, you know, sniper style weapons, and Marksman's Focus got a massive buff. They really excel with those buffs to marksman's focus. So this ultimately, you know, I used to run Revolver as like a sniper build on my veteran, but Revolver's ammo efficiency, yes, it can one-tap crushers on the current patch, so that's nice, but Revolver's ammo efficiency is very low. These things have effectively infinite ammo. And so if you are just ignoring crushers and killing every other enemy in the entire room with a single bullet, you will just clear rooms if you can aim and click. So if you're going executioner stance, this is one of your best picks, except in crushers. So yeah, it's a very solid weapon now. And yeah, it fits that role. It doesn't, the other thing, I'm not going to keep it against it because it hasn't changed, right? The thing I really hate about the weapon still is their sound design, and their overall feel is poo-poo. They feel like you're shooting a Nerf gun. Like and I've actually shot Nerf guns that have more like impact and gun feel than these things do. Even the high caliber one, I think this one right here, I can't remember the names of them, but it's a single shot, the single shot one with the highest damage. It's like, that's it. You just go, wow, yay. Yeah, so if they like bump those up and make them go pow or something, like it would really improve the game feel. Their actual like playability is good now, but like this, they still like really lack in that overall feel department. Feels, not reels. They added new sounds. I did not notice the new sounds. Maybe it's only on the burst fire one, but the single shot one sounds effectively the same to me. I am not feeling it. Okay, so we've got the Thunderhammer here. The Thunderhammer is getting some nice gains here. Actually, yeah, let's give it nice gains. Let's give it nice gains. So the Thunderhammer is a weapon that is really encumbered by how like slow and clunky it is. It does great dunking on bosses, and if you're a member to my channel, you can actually view that video right now. But the Thunderhammer likes the martyrdom change a lot. 50% damage and 30% attack speed makes up for a lot of the issues that it has. Of course, it also really likes that new talent node that gives it 50% cleave and 10% damage when you're surrounded, because that's like when it fares kind of the worst, is when there's a bunch of enemies and it can only hit 3 at a time. It also really likes being able to move while holding heavies. That changes it. So it gets a lot of buffs from the talent tree. I just don't think it takes it and runs with it as far as certain other weapons do, because it, even with 30% attack speed, even with 50% damage, it is still a weapon that is just clunky to a fault. And what you'll find when you are using this weapon in just like a competition with other players who are playing Havoc 40 is you're gonna do top boss damage, sure, but you're gonna fall way behind your teammates in like general moment-to-moment gameplay, because you just can't get shots on targets, and like non-empowered hits do wet noodle damage. You have to like stack up Slaughterer by swinging through enemies to get sufficient damage to actually start like one-shotting shotgunners and stuff like that. Meanwhile, things like the Force Greatsword can just come in there, pop Scryer's Gaze, start light attacking and cutting gunners' heads off within 1 second of their activation. You don't have any build up or anything. And yeah, you're losing out on boss damage, but like there's tons of other ways to do boss damage in the game. So yeah, they're still like being held back by just the design of the weapon, but they did gain overall in this patch. This is a duplicate, by the way, so I'm gonna skip over that. And then we've got our Force Swords. The Force Swords, I am gonna rate them. Wait, does Xeno would know this? Can you deflection plasma gunner shots? Because that makes a difference. Because they do, remember, these are some of the only weapons in the game that have Uncanny Strike. So they are staying in relevancy against Crusher changes because of Uncanny Strike. Okay, yeah, okay, so they're just like, okay, so I'll give them a nice gains here. So just like the shields here, blocking weapons get value because plasma gunners are such bullshit. Because plasma gunners will insta-wipe you if you are not prepared for them to exist, and usually your first announcement that a plasma gunner exists is getting shot by one and losing all your toughness, and then the second shot is a moment away. So having a weapon like this where you can just throw up that block with Deflector, and for whatever reason, the plasma gunner shots do almost no stamina value and therefore no peril value when you're blocking. And yeah, you just sit there and you can just block all day. So this is a very, very valuable trait to have against plasma gunners, which both of these weapons share, and of course the Ogrren's shield will share in a little bit. The Other thing about them, of course, is the Uncanny Strike means that they are not as adversely affected by that, you know, roughly 80% health increase that the Crusher was given as other weapons. So you can still do the thing that you were doing before. It's just going to take you longer to plug away through their health, and there's that. But like a lot of their use was stacking up damage with like Soul Blaze or something, and then swapping back to them and getting those Uncanny Strike stacks up, and that's still going to be very, very effective. So yeah, I'll say that they definitely gained some nice value because of their utility gaining. Both the Uncanny Strikes and the Deflector Blessing are gaining stonks value in terms of utility. Crusher, unfortunately, is going in. Dang, that sucks. Crusher's main antagonist was the Crusher, funnily enough. He only has one move that is really effective against, sorry, he has two moves that are effective against Carapace armor. Overhead Bonk, Heavy 1, so you just repeatedly do Heavy 1 and pray for crits or use a charge to get a crit, or Push Stab. Push Stab attack does some pretty good rending as well, but neither one of them was ever that powerful in terms of raw damage, and the only saving grace before was that, like, yes, you would take about 4 bonks to kill a Crusher, but, like, you know, that's only 4 bonks. Now it's going to take you, like, 8, and that's far too much commitment for the time. And the fact that, like, the shock effect on this one does next to nothing against Crushers. It literally does, like, almost 0 additional damage. So there's no reason, there barely was to start with, but there's almost no reason to ever use the empowered mode on this weapon, and now there's even less, because, yeah, it's just, like, this weapon went from being a, hey, you know, you can pop some pretty good damage with this thing. It's got Slaughterer, it's got Skull Crusher, like, those are good blessings. But then you run into your arch enemy, the Crusher, and you're like, fuck, I need to swap to my Bolter or something. So yeah, it just kind of ground this thing to a halt. We got the Iron Helm hammer. I'll give it nice gains. This falls in the same category as our other Thunderhammer does. It's, yeah, it relies on all the same buffs, right? It gets attack speed buffs, it gets damage buffs, it gets movement buffs in terms of its, like, quality of life and stuff, cleave buffs. So it likes those things. I wouldn't say it's too adversely affected by other changes. And yeah, there you go. Dueling Swords, guys. Wow, Dueling Swords. Okay, so Dueling Swords, oof. They got nerfed, remember? Guys, remember they got nerfed? I don't want to put that because then someone will clip it. The Dueling Swords are... Man, they're huge W's. I hate to say it. They're huge W's. It's just... So this is going back to the thing I've said before. Weapons serve as a conduit for player power, right? The best weapons in the game can take 10% player power and turn it into 10% or more damage or more effect on killing enemies and removing enemies. So these weapons have always been at that very upper edge of conduit power, where they're literally taking your player power, and with the previous, like, finesse bonuses and, like, headshot critical bonuses that they had, they were doing 3.5x of whatever damage you would have done raw. So that was crazy. And then they have Uncanny Strike, of course, which removes any negative penalty there might be to Carapace. So, like, any negative, like, dampening effects on your player power are gone. So they can only really increase you. So what would have had to happen this patch for these things to not see a sizable increase in power? Well, they would have had to actually get nerfed in their stats in any real way. Unfortunately, all they did was they just changed the pokey stab, which effectively, like, doesn't really do that much. Yeah, like, it. I'm hearing from sources that the stabbing, staggering everything might be a bug that's occurring on lots of weapons, so I don't really want to consider that in the ranking here. But they sustained most of their damage, and they kept Uncanny Strike at full stupid value. And then, underneath all of that, it's not the Dueling Swords themselves, but it's the stuff that's going on with all the classes. Veterans' melee power went up massively, and Zealots' melee power went up massively, just their raw damage. Because before, like, these were some of the best weapons in the game because they had high raw damage and high finesse modifiers, and like you could stack crit on those two classes. Now those two classes have, yes, you can stack crit, but they also get like tons of base damage. So like flanking attacks with this weapon now gain 25% additional damage. Like they're gonna get 50% damage if you're going martyrdom. Right, 50% damage on a dueling sword. Like you saw if you watched my 2 swords video, you can dunk a crusher in one hit with these things if you get a crit. So that went crazy, and psychers also got buffs to melee, just having more easily accessible melee buffs in the tree. So there's nothing in this patch that hurts them at all in any way. Even their nerf, I did air quotes there, you couldn't see it. Even their nerf was not consequential. What is consequential is that all the classes that use these weapons got huge buffs to their baseline stats, and these weapons convert that brawl stats into killing crushers, and they do massive, massive damage. And the buffs to things like Shroud Field, Shroud Field getting an additional 50% backstab and 50% weak spot damage means, I mean, their multipliers are through the fucking roof. It's crazy. You're one-shotting bosses with these now. So yeah, they are big winners in the patch, and yeah, they're some of the only weapons that survive pretty much completely unscathed in their role. Shovels, I will say, because shovels also have Uncanny Strike, so I'll give them nice gains. You know, shovels, remember, these are veteran-only weapons. Veteran got massive buffs to his melee. I mean, he's got a minor node. Oh, thank you, Jonathan, by the way. Welcome to Mystery Man. The shovels are on the veteran. The veteran has a minor node now that gives you 15% damage to melee. And of course, weapon specialist as a tree has effectively been shortened and like made more efficient in terms of like where the good nodes are. Oh, and don't forget, there's a new node, well, not a new node, but the sprinting node on veteran that now just gives 25% flat base damage. There's like no less than 3 different nodes on veteran that give you just base damage. You have like 50% base damage with range weapons, and then for melee weapons it's like 30 or something. So yeah, the value of the shovels has only increased in terms of where they were before, because they have retained that uncanny value, and they've got a bunch of value from the veteran melee buffs in general. I'm also going to put our little shock maul friend in this category. Still a very, very usable weapon. Did not get hurt by, I can't remember the name of this shock maul, by the way. It did not get hurt by those crusher buffs in any way, shape, or form, because he can paralyze crushers. He has innate rending, so he just kind of bonks through crusher armor. And just being able to be a solid, consistent weapon that applies Skull Crusher to bosses. More prevalence of bosses only plays in this weapon's favor. This is a boss killing weapon. It might not seem it at first, right? It doesn't deal the damage to bosses, but it is a primer. So having one of these on your team is massive. If you don't have an Ogrren, you need one of these because it gives you the Skull Crusher effect, and there's almost no other weapons that can apply it. So yeah, you bring this thing. Captains, they're a fucking joke with this thing, dude. Their shields get popped instantly, and once they start into that stagger animation where they're rolling around on the ground, Skull Crushers apply to them, so they just start getting melted, and you can just go into them. The same thing applies to twins. So this like single-handedly shuts down some of the most annoying weapons, or some of the most annoying boss enemies in the game. And of course, like, you know, just general buffs to damage affect them greatly. Just increasing, that's the one thing they've been lacking in, is just raw damage, raw power. But now all the classes have so much more just raw damage. Easy peasy. Chain axes. I'm going to give these a huge W. I think all chain weapons, I'm going to give huge Ws, just not to spoil my my future Eviscerators and stuff. But like, chain weapons really ate well with this patch. I was very pleased to see that update. I did not expect that to come to chain weapons. I thought they were just going to kind of languish forever. Especially the Mark 12 here got some sizable like quality of life buffs. It feels so much better to use. I mean, this thing is like two-shotting maulers to the body with heavy attacks. So that's a really good place for it to be in. The rev is quality, like it can get some good damage through. And these weapons have never really struggled for damage. They've struggled in terms of that just being a pain to play with, right? They're getting stuck and stuff. They're just taking far too long to rev up. The martyrdom changes have really affected them in a positive way, because martyrdoms, well, just generally attack speed increases the animation speed for like revving chain weapons and stuff like that. So you can reset and go again really, really quickly with them. These weapons, like, they've always been weapons that people really wanted to use, and now they're weapons that you absolutely can use effectively. And they are weapons that they're maybe not the best weapon in the game against crushers and armor in general, but they're very effective. And of course, they shred bosses, they destroy bosses, they destroy shields if you're fighting twins or captains, which are very common these days. So yeah, they're just gonna, they're bringing home W's. Also getting a massive W, huge W here is our friend, the Bully Club and Slab Shield. So this weapon was the absolute premier weapon pre-patch, or sorry, not pre-patch, but pre-Ogrren update, right? Before Ogrren saw any buffs. Because back in my day, a year ago or like 6 months ago or whatever, the meta was different with the Ogrren, right? The Ogrren needed to heavy attack in order to apply batter stacks, the bleed stacks, right? It was 4 stacks of bleed for heavy attack, none for light attack. So it was a heavy attack meta, and guess what weapon was the best heavy attacker in the game, in the biz? It was the Slab Shield, because the Slab Shield's heavy 1 is just that edge on bash, heavy 2 is a big wide sweep, and you could turn in a circle and hit everything. So heavy attack into bleeds was where it was at, and this was one of the best weapons for applying it. The other weapons that did well with heavy attacks were the pickaxes, and they don't care about bleeds, they just kill outright. But this was a great weapon, amazing CC, amazing utility with being able to block. And then oh, welcome, Caleb, thank you. And then the update hit to Ogrren, and batter was changed to apply 2 stacks of bleed on light attacks. And they also buffed bully clubs, especially the Mark III bully club right here. And that completely changed everything for this weapon, because no longer is heavy attacking an efficient way to do it. It's much better to spam light attacks, because every light attack you applies more stagger. Every hit is an additional proc of 5% toughness gain back. If you have confident strikes, it's another 7% toughness gain back. And so 2 hits with light attacks gives you more additional benefits and is easier to do than charging up 1 heavy attack, and you get the same amount of bleed stacks out of it. So immediately everyone just dropped this weapon and went to this weapon. And that kind of crushed it. So light attacks dominate the meta. And now, with batter being nerfed and 4 stacks of bleed on heavy, going back to probably being one of the more efficient ways to apply it, this weapon wins out there. It also has pretty fast light attacks and good stagger values, so you go in with your heavy 1, you smash that enemy right in the bridge of the nose with the edge of the shield, they go to the ground, and then you follow up with 2 or 3 light attacks, stack those bleeds up to 7. This weapon also has Skull Crusher, by the way, meaning it's one of the best weapons in the game, because that blessing is one of the most broken. It's like right behind Uncanny. And then yeah, you just capitalize on that. And of course, it's a shield. And as we just addressed previously with these 2 weapons and these 3 weapons, and we'll do one more time with this last shield weapon down here, shields gain a big utility buff because plasma gunners are bullshit. And this weapon can block plasma gunners. So you just walk towards them slowly but menacingly, and then you shove them over and you beat them to death. Because otherwise you are a walking target for them. Ogrren has it the worst with these plasma gunners, dude. I took him into the Psychanium. I think I made it to like 19 seconds of surviving against 3 plasma gunners with Zealot, and I could survive 5 seconds with the Ogrren. Because you literally, like, you're so fat and your dodges are so small and ineffective comparatively, you just get nicked by every fucking blast, and it is a horrible, horrible existence. So yeah, this helps him with that issue a lot, like solves the issue, and so we like it. So big W for the shield. Rashad here. Rashad, I'm gonna go. So Rashad is the one axe that like kind of maintains its viability because it has always had kind of decent armor penetration and single target. So I'm gonna go. I don't know, this is such a weird weapon these days, dude. It's so like clunky. It's so very much Darktide 1.0. The buffs to the melee classes definitely benefit this weapon. I think it can still get through crushers fairly well. So I don't think I want to ding it too much on that front. So I'm going to give it nice gains here. The Rashad can effectively convert that damage to the classes to some serious like chop damage. This weapon, go into the Psychanium, take this weapon, heavy attack a boss to the face like 6 times. It's dead. Like this weapon for whatever reason has massive, because it has first target and finesse and damage multipliers. Like it has all these stacking, like, you know, get the crit headshot multipliers. So I don't think anyone is going to use this weapon. Let me be very clear about that. I think this weapon is still pretty damn low down in terms of like the overall tier, like power list, because it's just such a clunk weapon to use. The light attacks are slow and like do almost no damage, and the heavy attacks are like slow and boring. It's just like bonk, bonk. This is also one of the like the lamest feeling weapons in the game, but you know, that's besides the point. So, but in general, it has gone up in power. We've got our other force sword. This is the good one, right? This is the Mark 6. I'm gonna give that also nice gains. I can't ever tell the fucking difference between these stupid things. Nice gains, because veteran melee power is way up. It's empowered mode, carving through armor, no problem. So we can just wrap that in with the previous discussion about the power sword. Now, next up, we got the Eviscerators. As I spoke about previously, Eviscerators are hitting that huge W. Wow. I mean, if you didn't see my video on it, Eviscerators have had several like quality of life here. The changes to Zealot overall, they love the martyrdom buff. They love the like bleeding enemies take extra damage buff. They love just so many things about the Zealot update. And they also changed the way that this weapon works with charge, because that was previously like sort of the way people played it. Previously, what you could do is you could latch this weapon with you special, latch it on a boss's face, and then you would charge, and it would give you a big boost of damage near the end of the rip. But now you charge, you rev, and then you charge, and then you hit the boss, and you'll end up doing about 20% more damage than you were before. And this is like, you know, this is supposed to be like a nerf. That was a cheaty tech before, where you could actually like get an additional hit out of that charge. But this makes it just so much easier to use. There's no like finicky timing or anything. You charge in and you land the hit, and they do really crazy damage now. And they also cleave into armor, no problem. You'll cut a crusher right in half with a charge, and yeah, pretty solid stuff. I really like where these weapons are at. They feel great. They are very like aura with the whole Zealot thing. I've always wanted them to be good, and I think we're at a place where they finally are good. I would say they're probably in the S tier, but this is not a tier list. They won in this patch. They went up a lot in power in this patch. Heavy swords, however, if you didn't see my video, 2 swords video, heavy swords are some of the biggest losers in this patch. They've always maintained one of the lowest regular damage to carapace ratios. They have no effective ways of dealing with carapace at all. Their light attacks deal single digit, no joke, literally single digit damage versus carapace. And they went from having a very inconvenient road bump when a crusher would occur to having a literally insurmountable mountain that when a crusher shows up in your game, and crushers are in all of your games now if you are playing on Damnation or above. And so you'll run into one of them with this, and then you're like, okay, shit. Besides that, I mean, these weapons never had anything really good going for them, and they don't really convert any of that additional power that Zealot or whoever has access to anything even moderately useful. So yeah, they're not getting like sizable buffs out of martyrdom or anything that's going to redeem this. It's just that crusher problem is just such a huge issue for them. The las pistol, the heavy las pistol, I am going to put this into the... it's somewhere in here. I'm going to put this in the nice gains category. So the heavy las pistol, always been a very solid sidearm. The heavy las pistol actually got a buff for Psychers specifically, because Psychers now get a little force shove they can do with it that has some additional radius. This weapon also has a completely glitched push. Actually, I don't know if they fixed that in this patch, so let me not speak out of ignorance. because they did make it have a different animation for push on Psyker, so they might have gone back and fixed the duration of the push, but the push is very, very funny and very long in terms of how long it shoves things away, if you haven't tried it. But these weapons benefited on Psyker because the flat damage that is now all over the tree for crits and all that stuff. Crits now apply general damage, not just to warp attacks with some blessings at the top. It really likes the changes to Scryers. I mean, Scryers is better, so this weapon is better for Psychers. For Veterans, I mean, Veterans went up in damage and this weapon is fine. So it's not like a massive, massive gain, but this weapon has always been pretty good, and just general buffs to its damage are going to increase its usability. This is a bossing weapon. This weapon destroys monstrosities and stuff like that. It never really was anything against Crushers, so I won't really rate its efficacy. Like, no one was using this to kill Crushers before, and no one should be using it to kill Crushers afterwards, so the introduction of these high health enemies isn't going to make a huge difference there. And there's really no other gameplay features that have changed considerably that would bring it down in power, so the player power increase makes it go up. Our shotguns, where's the other? Let me take the other plasma pistol, or last pistol while I'm here. Am I blind? I think I did this exact same thing last time I did a tier list. Okay, it's not in here. It's just not in here. Okay, I give up. The shotguns. The shotguns actually received a numerical nerf. They each have one less shell than they did before in their magazines, which kind of sucks. I'm gonna rank them about the same. These weapons, I mean, they were never used on Crushers. Third from bottom, second from right. Oh, third from bottom. Guys, it's not here. There's no way. You're all wrong. It's definitely not. No. You're wrong. It's not here. You won't find it. Okay. So these weapons, they weren't used on Crushers before, so Crusher change didn't affect them. I just feel like, I don't know. I just don't feel like they really effectively gained too much from the changes at all. There are so many better weapons out there that are better at converting the power that we got, and I don't really see any reason to run these outside of the mobility. They aren't like overly ammo efficient. They're kind of ammo efficient. There's been no changes to bleed stack or fire stacks or anything. Yeah, I don't think my opinion about these weapons has changed at all. I don't think the use case for them has changed at all. I don't think they're any more or less usable now than they were in the past. They can still, all the targets they were shooting before, they're doing the exact same amount of damage as they were before as they are now. Like, they're still one or two shotting the same enemies. So yeah, and they don't really benefit from, they're not benefiting from Marksman's focus on Veteran, which would be like a class that could make a lot of use of them. So I'm gonna leave them right where they're at, and we'll just be comfortable there. We've got the heavy stubbers. Heavy stubbers are about the same. Heavy stubbers are very solid weapons. I don't know why I ever ranked them poorly, but like, they're boring weapons, but they're still good weapons. The Ogrren needs a counter sniper tool. I didn't just see the last pistol down there, by the way. I didn't just realize where that was. So they need a counter sniper tool, and this is their counter sniper tool, and it's a very effective one at that. There's been no real changes to the meta around Ogrens. Yes, they got a literally 2% buff to their not Blaze Way. God, I can't remember the name of it. It's been so long since I've used it. But yeah, the Gunlugger ultimate ability, and that Gunlugger ultimate ability, which people don't know about, that it exists anymore, is still pretty bad, right? It doesn't actually effectively give you anything. So these are still just quality sidearms, but they haven't really gotten any better anywhere, so leave them right where they are. Same thing applies to our friend, the twin-linked stubbers. The change to insert Gunlugger ultimate ability here, the change to it is so inconsequential. I don't know why they made, yeah, it's point blank barrage. Thank you, jeez. I don't know why they made that change at all. I mean, I do, because it's a buff and it needs a buff, but like, that's not where the core issues with that ability is, right? The core issues is that it provides you like next to nothing for your ultimate. It just provides you additional attack speed or additional like damage or additional movement speed. It doesn't like really give you very many stats, and it's got an 80-second cooldown. It's just bad. Like, it's just bad. And like, for a pure DPS ability like it is, it's a pure DPS ability that asks you to consume more resources while you do it, like blast through your ammo really fast. How often is that useful? And they also capped those burn stacks at 16 previously instead of 32. So like murdering a boss in 3 seconds is out with it. So yeah, that change with the Ogrren rework really hurt it in a bad way. And I don't see it clawing back from that unless they really do something in a big way about like making it have some effect. Maybe like just doesn't consume ammo while it's active, and it has such a long cooldown you would almost think that it would be like free ammo while it's shooting, and that could bring weapons like these back into relevancy. But for right now, they're staying exactly where they're at, which is, you know, in a bad place. This is not the tier list, right? They're about the same, and if I were to put them in the tier list, they'd be at the bottom of the tier list. We've got infantry autoguns. Infantry autoguns in general are gaining nicely because of the changes to marksman's focus. Autoguns love this change. They eat finesse damage for breakfast, especially the Vrax autogun, which is not there, and it is not on this list. It must be another one that's absolutely 100% missing, and I'm not missing it because I'm blind or anything. Here it is. And yeah, so like these autoguns love finesse strength, finesse modifier, and reload speed and stuff like that, and that's what marksman focus gives you now. And now you can actually move, you can run and gun, and so you can get a ton of damage out of these things. They are some of the veteran weapons that don't really rely on like swapping, so weapons focus is out, and you wouldn't be using focus target with them because they are direct damage weapons, and yeah, focus target really isn't essential for them. So yeah, they love marksman's focus, and marksman's focus got a huge buff, so these weapons go up. Now, they weren't really used against crushers before because they have no armor penetration, and the nerf to the positioning of onslaught hurts them in terms of killing those armored targets. But even with onslaught fully stacked at 40% rend or 40% brittleness, they still sucked at killing armor. So yeah, we'll keep them where they are with nice gains because of those marksman focus buffs. Vigilant autoguns, they also are going to get a nice, not vigilant, braced autoguns are going to get a nice buff here. Braced autoguns are in an awkward spot, but general buffs to like just damage and like the power level of the veteran as a class brings them up a lot. They're decent sidearms, but like, yeah, they're the only reason they're going where they're going is because general damage went up. No one is really using these weapons. I would rank them pretty low in the power structure if I was doing a tier list, just to be fully, full disclosure with you. But I have to point out the fact that in comparison to like the rest of the game, they went up in power because player power went up. They were not used on crushers before, and they're not used on adapters, so we can avoid that part of the discussion. Revolvers, though, oh boy. Revolver, specifically the... Jesus, why don't I know? This is the one that actually... This one looks like it is the barrel. Okay, so this is the one that is the sniper rifle, and this is the one that's the fan, the hammer. So both of these weapons, big buffs. We now have a option on veteran of taking an extra round in the cylinder, which allows you to load 2 rounds with 1 animation. It takes like 1 second, so you can cheese out rounds when you're at this, and that was one of the worst parts. Reload talents and headshot talents and stuff like that are so much better now. Marksman's focus takes these things to the absolute fucking moon. If you didn't see my high noon video or whatever I titled it, you can literally one-shot crushers, 6,500 HP crushers on the new patch, no problem. Activate your ultimate, get a crit, headshot, done. That's it. And you can drop them one after another. Like, it's not even hard. So yeah, like if you can aim, this is one of the best sidearms on veteran. And yeah, I mean, it does crazy damage because of that rending. Because if you can guarantee a crit with it, you're going to hit 60% rending, and you just go straight through crushers. It one-shots everything else in the game. The Fan the Hammer one is just going to be worse because it doesn't benefit from some of those crazy talents that scale, such as Surgical, where you can aim down the sights and stack the crit like that, and get that single shot. Really, that's all you need, right? Fanning the Hammer is not that useful unless you're mag dumping on a boss. The reload speed, the stacking reload speed buffs that are all over the veteran tree now, between Marksman's Focus and between the nodes in the top of the tree, are so high that your reload really isn't an encumbering factor anymore for veteran, which is really, and then for like Zealot, this has just always been a quality sidearm. I don't see any reason, you know, to avoid it. So yeah, like this is a good gun. It's a really good gun, and like the fact that it could just dink on crushers and stuff like that, the fact that Marksman's Focus got such a huge buff, I just have to give it that huge W. And yeah, it's like one of the, this is the sniper rifle in the game. This is the, like this and the bolter are like your sniper rifles, right? We've got the Flamer. Flamer is going to go... Is it about the same? No, Flamer is going to go nice gains. Zealot overall has gotten damage buffs. Zealot also has a more accessible way to path to the infested and unyielding damage, which is good for this node. It also has, it's only 1 point to buy the 25% base damage with close proximity, so that helps the Flamer. The Flamer in general is just a weapon that scales with difficulty, so as the game ramps up in difficulty and spawns more stuff, which seems like the general trend over time, it also scales equivalently. It hasn't gone up a huge amount in power. If I were to like put it in terms of like which one has gained the most, I'd say it's at the low end of the power that it's gained, but it's just a little bit easier to build around having a Flamer. And like, you know, with how viable a myriad of Zealot melees are now, you don't have to really rely on having like a specific ranged weapon with the class to like fill for like, I have a weakness against this. So then you can just bring the Zealot's strongest ranged weapon, which is the Flamer. So yeah. Is it this lost 3 ammo capacity? What the hell? Trash! I'm just kidding. Grenade thing, about the same. I don't have anything to say about this weapon. I have never felt any sort of way about the Grenadier gauntlets. There were no changes to the talent tree that affected this thing. Ammo stayed the same, explosion radius stayed the same. So yeah, this weapon is exactly where it was before. No one was running it with heavy hitter. They patched it so it doesn't apply heavy bleed stacks on every light attack like it used to back in like Darktide early days. So yeah. Didn't they fix the rending like Fury of the Faithful thing with the ranged weapons? I don't know. But yeah, this weapon's about the same. Double barrel shotgun. I am gonna say, I mean, this is a good veteran weapon. I'm gonna give this nice gains. The veteran is gonna be your best user of this weapon for obvious reasons. Weapon specialist, always prepared, I believe it's called. Or is it locked and loaded? I can't remember. The one that loads 1 free shell every time you claim a kill. There is also a very easily accessible node directly above it that gives you 25% damage on range kill and 25% damage on melee kill, and swap back and forth. You can also take, you know, run and gunning playstyles with veteran, where you're like going melee focused veteran, but you've got this sidearm to like blast an immediate amount, like a huge amount of damage, are very viable. And you can take the skirmisher talent with this. So with this, you can stack a crazy amount of damage. You can guarantee crits with Manstopper, cleave through a whole horde and blast them away instantly. And it's not like the sidearm, right? You're still going to be plasma gun. You could probably run revolver or something, right? To similar effect. But this weapon definitely gained power with the update because of that. And of course you can run triple barrel shotgun, which I guess I'll make that build at some point, but like it's kind of a meme. But I mean, it's triple barrel shotgun. Triple barrel, double barrel shotgun is pretty funny and pretty good. As far as any other class, I mean, the Zealot has it, right? I guess you could do like the flanking attack plus point blank damage. Those nodes did get a little bit easier to reach, so you could have like flanking. You could like infiltrate, shoot enemies in the back. So yeah, it's gonna go up a little bit. Okay. And then we got to get to our staves. This is the Void Blast staff, and this is the Void Strike staff, to be clear. So, and if it's not, that's what I'm telling you that it is. So just keep that in mind when I'm ranking them. So the Void Blast staff, aka the one that paints the little circle on the ground and then explodes, is gaining quite nicely. Maybe even W-ly. How do we feel, Xeno, as the resident psyker? Do you feel like it's worthy of the W, or has it only gone up the nice gains? But all these staffs, excepting electrokinetic staff, have definitely gained power, because we've got just general power creep in the psyker talent tree. We've got an additional node that provides monstrosity and Ogrren damage now, which is a thing they struggled against before. We've also gotten some more generalized damage that applies whenever you get a crit with anything. These weapons get big buffs in terms of that. Of course, you got, I think this is actually a huge W. The shortening of the caster tree, the devoted caster tree with warp charges, the fact that it has additional base damage built into it now saves you a node, and of course that node that I can never remember, to the right of Empiric Resolve there, which now gives you a scaling up to 20% rending, which is very powerful. Like, that is very, very powerful. That is a thing that is slept upon, because like before that was 10% rending, only went over 75% peril. Now it scales, so you'll hit 10% rending at 50% peril, which is really easy to hit with this weapon. And then when you're riding 75% of peril plus, you're at 15% plus rending, which is actually quite a lot, plus the brittleness that you'll have on some of these staves. So yeah, the overall damage buffs make this very high, and of course, this weapon has absurd CC, and that means that Crushers, even though it might take a long time to kill Crushers, they can't do anything to it, because Crushers didn't get any buffs to their resilience, to their poise against crowd control effects, and this has full crowd control. The Void Blast staff has the highest level of stagger that you can get in the game. So like that's enough to knock over captains and stuff when their shields are broken. The other abilities and other things that can do this are like Veteran Shout, and I believe the reworked Paw can do it. If you slap them in the face with it, it'll knock them down. But like, it's a really, really powerful knockdown effect is what I'm trying to say here, and that's incredibly valuable when you've got enemies that threaten to steamroll your team if you don't. For the Void Strike staff, I would also say that it's gotten that huge W. Again, just straight power increases, the ability to cast more and get more out of every cast. I'm not saying that by any means that the Void Strike is near the Void Blast or the Purgatus staff or the Flame staff, or whatever you want to call it. Far from. I think this weapon lags behind us quite a bit, and it did catch a nerf in terms of they hit, what blessing is it? They hit that blessing on the tree. I can't remember if it was recently, or if it was with this patch, or if it was just recently, but they hit the node where when you get headshots, it stacks up and gives you a guaranteed crit. And before, I think this was changed a while ago, honestly, so I might need to stop talking about it. But before you could shoot all of them in a big long line, and you would guarantee a crit on your next shot, because if you hit 5 heads with one shot, your next one was guaranteed a crit. And now well, at least on the talent tree as it exists now with the Psyker, you can't do that. I think that was changed in the last like minor changes, so I won't expound on it too much. But yeah, the weapon overall gets huge damage boosts and rending boosts, and it's just easier to cast for longer, so that's good. And let's go ahead and do the Flame Staff while we're here. Obviously, huge W. This was, it's on the right side of the tree, comrade. It's the one with the little DNA looking thing. It's every 5 headshots you get, gain a guaranteed crit on your next shot. True aim, probably. Yeah, true aim, sounds about right. So Flame Staff what happened to Flame Staff exactly what I warned would happen when I was talking about the potential Psyker rework, wink wink, and that is that if you increase the base power level of a class, the weapons that are already the most powerful are gonna gobble that up, right? The Psyker's Flame Staff is the most effective weapon on the class, right? It's the weapon that can translate Every percentage of damage you give to him is 1% damage you deal to literally every enemy that's in front of you. It can be one enemy or it can be 10,000 enemies. And since it has that multiplicative scaling, every 20% damage you give to him, say against like, 20% rending or 20% just damage against Ogrens and stuff, that makes him deal 20% damage against more bosses and crushers and all that stuff. So yeah, this weapon got a buff because the flat damages of the Psyker got a buff. The Psyker also got basically a free 5% crit that you had to go out of your way to path for before, and this weapon really loves to crit because it stacks 2 flame stacks at once. Damage over time effects are at a huge premium in general, and Soul Blaze is one of the best. And overall, the Psyker's talent tree just got such a buff in terms of being able to pick way more nodes that are effective now. Before, it was kind of a stretch to pair this with, someone will have to fill me in on the name of the node here, but every time you use a primary attack with the staff, it makes the target take 6% more damage from your warp effects, up to 30%, and this was a node that you would take with flame staff because you can light attack and build those flame stacks, and now your soul blazes do 30% more. That's a guaranteed inclusion now because it's right there. It's literally 1 point. Before, you kind of had to go out of your way and you could only be forced to one side of the tree. Now it's an auto include, and that's a massive increase to soul blaze damage. So yeah, this thing just took everything that was given to the Psyker and ran with it exactly in the way we expected it to. Is that disappointing that like the best weapons just got even better? Yeah. But at the same time, a lot of stuff that was on the Psyker and a lot of stuff on a lot of classes got good enough to be used across all games, and so I'm supportive of that. I just hate to see that there are still weapons that are just like very, very clear options, and I think that limits build creativity and it limits players' imagination because they want to, they only want to play with the best stuff, and if the best stuff is very obvious, then they won't really want to branch out. RBD shotguns, I'm going to go about the same here. I mean, still some of the strongest range weapons of the game. Ripper guns, oof. I mean, well, no, not oof. Damn, I don't want to give them oof. No one was using these things on. I just hate these guns. I want to put them about the same. I wanted to take a chance to shit on Ripper guns, but I hate Ripper guns. But now they're about the same. No one was shooting crushers with them before. Nothing really has changed about the game that's affected Ripper guns. No one's using can opener. Nobody in the comments say can opener. Like, Ripper guns are just not usable weapons. And yeah, you can't hit anything with them. You'll waste so much ammo shooting. I'm not going to turn this into a complaint session about this weapon I don't like. So we'll leave that aside. There's been no buffs to Ogrren, and these weapons weren't being used on crushers, so that's not going to affect it too much. Bolt pistol. Bolt pistol got a new mark, right? And so that it can be considered. I forgot that in the element here. I guess that's not a change mark, but I'm gonna give bolt pistol a W here. Bolt pistol is very usable. It's got a new mark, so that's good. More options is very, very good. And then, of course, like the scaling damage that we've got with Veteran, how good Grenade Veteran is now means that this weapon gets a lot of value out of that. Of course, there is the ever useful and awesome and based Suiciker, which I will definitely be putting out that build just as soon as Xeno shows it on stream, and I just like get a peek at that. And like that build is just made way better by the explosion radius, because that's one of the best builds in the game for sure. But yeah, like this weapon was solid before, and it's solid after, and increases to things like Marksman's Focus help it. This is a really nice head popper weapon for Veteran. It's a solid sidearm for Zealots, and it's the fact that it has that explosion radius is like such a cute little like synergy that you won't get on many other things. So I love that about it, and yeah, it's just reaffirming its place and getting that extra mark is very nice, because you can use it to do CC instead of straight damage now, which is quality. Plasma gun, King Upon the Mountain plasma gun, one of the only range weapons unaffected by any additional crusher health, any additional density of hordes. Man, this weapon gets a W alone for dodging the nerfs. I thought for certain it was gonna happen with this thing. I was like, oh my god, like I saw the patch notes and it was like, okay, dueling sword nerfs are coming in. I was like, oh shit, they're gonna drop the plasma nerfs too, and they're buffing the veterans, so this would be the time to do it. But nope, plasma, as good as ever, still one of the best conduits in the game for converting your player damage into or your player power into enemy damage. And of course, veterans went through the roof in terms of their overall power, and so it's so much easier to get so many value nodes. Like I said before, there was about 50% base damage you can get across the veteran tree now. There's 15% base damage to ranged when you haven't taken a melee attack. There's just 15% base damage to elites, and there's 25% base damage, although someone was saying that it actually calculates multiplicatively, but 25% base damage for sprinting and sliding, which is very, very easy to do when you're a player who is not suffering from severe brain trauma. So this weapon is juiced to the absolute max by the changes to the veteran tree. It was already good, and it can still penetrate literally everything in a huge long line and just blast it down. It doesn't care about the changes to the crusher. If you run it with executioner stance, you'll literally like almost one-shot crusher. Although, hell, why innovate at all, guys? Just run this dueling sword and shout and just win the game, right? So yeah, this weapon is still absolutely fucking slapping, no doubts about it. We got some nice gains for our Shredder auto pistol boy here. He's cute. I love this little guy. Just the general weapon buffs. Remember, this is a weapon that wasn't being used against crushers or high health enemies prior, and the general weapon buffs to veteran help it quite a bit. You could run this thing with Scryer's Gaze and it would probably kind of pop off, not gonna lie. It's a high damage little weapon. It's had buff after buff, and now these base damage buffs are putting it in a very comfortable like spot damage wise. It only takes a couple bullets to pop down like a shotgun or a regular gunner and stuff like that, and it's a fast moving weapon. So I have to give it nice gains because the power of classes has creeped up overall, and it's not encumbered by those crusher changes. The shot pistol and shield, nice gains for shot pistol and shield. The shot pistol and shield on the Arbites, right? Arbites didn't change at all. This weapon didn't change at all. What did change is that you have to block now. And so now, if you are playing in Havoc and plasma gunners exist, right? A plasma gunner can happen to you and your family at any time. And you don't want to run this, right? You don't want to run this. You want to run this, because this one slaps. But how am I going to block plasma gunners? Well, you run this. You just use that shield. And then you can just, anytime plasma gunners happen, you pull this out and you just block your way to safety. Easy peasy. This weapon is just useful, even if you don't even shoot with the shot pistol, which is a good side weapon. The ability to block and shoot at the same time, very useful for plasma gunners. It's very useful for like things like Reapers and stuff like that. So good weapon, has that utility combined with it, and the fact it's a sidearm that can provide you that utility, so you don't have to sacrifice your main weapon. Very big. We come finally, no, not finally, when we have all these to go. We got the regular laser rifles, boys, the infantry lasguns. These weapons are gonna get some nice gains here. I don't think they're the biggest W's in the world. Remember, it did get a little bit harder to access Shock Trooper, but the finesse damage, the Marksman focus buffs, of course, and the executioner stance buffs, these weapons work really well with those archetypes. They weren't very effective at dealing with crushers before, and they certainly aren't after, but they are incredibly ammo efficient weapons. If you're looking to walk around the map and pop heads, they are one of the only weapons on the veteran with a fucking sight somehow. So yeah, I think they're getting some gains because the veteran is getting gains. This is really the class that's using them, right? I don't think that zealots are using these or anything. You know, you start with one on like every class, but yeah, these weapons are not used outside of veterans who are role playing as guardsmen, and guardsmen are eating pretty good with changes to executioner stance and stuff, so we got to give them that. Heavy las pistol, this one I already talked about, is up in the nice gains category, and there's only one of those on the whole board, so we won't mention that. Bolter, Bolter is huge W for Bolter, of course. Bolter got another mark. The other mark for Bolter, no joke, legit, very good. Very good alternate mark. The alternate mark for the bolt pistol, I don't really love. I have to give it a W for increasing its power in general. Like, it has more versatility, more options equals more power, as long as the options are somewhat pretty good. But this bolter, the alternate mark for this is very destructive. It does enough damage and has enough radius that it can really fuck up a horde. Like, it'll just, for very little ammo expenditure, it'll do a lot of effective damage, and it'll throw enemies and like move enemies around and stop them, knock them out of their animations and stuff like that. It doesn't serve its normal purposes when you do that, but it can be altered. Like, you know, you can play with around a different thing. So if you've got like your dueling sword in your primary, this can be your shit, I don't want to deal with these 10 ragers that are coming at me at once, and just shoot them all in the face. So there's that. 1, 2, 3, 4 stabs. There it is. There. Electrokinetic, sorry. Yeah, so Bolter, big glow up, and of course, Bolter Veteran. Wow. Bolter Veteran has always been like kind of a thing. Executioner stance Bolter Veteran really slaps. And now with changes to the way that finesse can scale in this weapon with marksman, yeah, you can like puncture crushers, and I think you can insta kill them with it. You should be able to anyway. It depends on if you get a crit or not, right? But yeah, these weapons do some serious damage. They are one of the sniper rifles of the game. Of course, being a sniper veteran is in. It might not be the best thing in the world, but it's definitely a viable option. And yeah, they have no problem with crushers. They can absolutely dunk crushers all day, at least in the Mark IIB variant. The AoE variant, the Mark III lock, is not for crushers. We've got kickback. Kickback is going to stay about the same for us because no Ogrren changes have been made. The Rumbler, about the same, right? I don't think any changes have been made. Yeah, I almost considered, like, you know, the fact that Rumbler dodged nerfs in any way, shape, or form, like, is kind of like a godsend as it is. I looked, when I saw that there was going to be Ogrren nerfs coming, I looked at the tree and I was like, oh my god, they're going to fucking gut everything that makes Ogrrenheimer do what it does. Nope, they literally just got like 5% off of the damage taken when meleeed thing, which, yeah, it affects, like, and 5% off of our ult giving base damage, but that affects the damage throughput of the Rumbler, but it doesn't really. And yeah, so this weapon just stays as good as it ever was. Oh, we got Wilbur Shotgun. We'll put those in about the same tier where we were before. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with the Hellbore lasguns, guys. So Hellbore lasguns are going to get some... I'll give Hellbores the W, guys. Why not give Hellbores the W? Right, when we're considering it, Hellbores got a little bit cleaner sights. They will never get an actual sight, so this is the best we can do. You know, from what we understand, GW has a very, very firm hold on what models and what, you know, what things are permitted and are legal and are okay to publish, and it has to match the miniatures. As far as I understand, there's not been permission from GW to have scoped Hellbores, so they're doing everything they can to make the sights as good as possible within the like realm of staying up with iron sights. So the iron sights are definitely a lot better now with that rear little notch being in there. The changes to Executioner stance, which is like the classic pairing with this, the ability to see where enemies are ahead of time, track them through walls and stuff, really helps the Hellbore, because you need to be prepared to shoot an enemy, like an enemy coming out from behind a cover and running to another one. Without that, you can't shoot off in time. But with Executioners, you can see when they're about to make that cross. You know, a trapper coming around the corner, and you can prepare your shot, and you can dink them from there. So that makes a big difference for them. Marksman's focus is a big difference for them, because these weapons eat and thrive on finesse damage, and so they multiply it in a big way. And as I said, sniper veterans are very viable. So these weapons really like those changes to the veteran, and since they're veteran classic weapons, and veteran overall has gained a lot of power. So they are doing really well there. So there you go, guys. So in summary, what are the takeaways from this list here? The simple fact of the matter is, for the weapons that we have at our disposal, is with this patch, we saw a big increase to the base power levels of all the classes in the game. And the thing I've said several times over, I'm going to say it again because I think it's just like the most simple way to put this, is that weapons in this game are a conduit of player power. You need to convert that player power into the ability to kill enemies. The weapons that have perennially been able to convert that power are still up there, right? The plasma gun is still up there. The dueling sword is still up there. These weapons excel at doing that because they ignore any effects that would downgrade that power, like armor, like the number of enemies, flame staff, right? Normally, you would have that player power and it's split across infinity enemies. You have to kill each one by one. The flame staff doesn't care how many enemies there are. The dueling swords don't care how much armor there is. The plasma gun doesn't care how many enemies there are or how much armor there is. And so these weapons can fully ignore the penalties that the game has tried to apply by increasing its difficulty, and they can just feast on that additional player power and take themselves to absurd extremes. Then weapons like knives also fall into that category and have gotten additional boosts out of this. The weapons that I'm really excited to see up here, the things that make me positive about this update overall, is that there are weapons up here that before I would not have thought very highly of. There are weapons up here that have gained a lot of power that previously would have been in a really bad spot. And I'm excited to, at some point in the near to mid future, do another tier list and look at these weapons again, because things like the power maul, completely revitalized, completely new, definitely a fun and enjoyable and powerful weapon now. Chain weapons overall are in such a good spot. They feel great and they are usable, which is something that so many people wanted. And look how many weapons this opens up, right? There's 2 chain swords, and these are on every human class except for the Arbites for some reason. The chain axes, wait, no, sorry, these are on the Arbites, right? And the chain axes are not for some reason. The chain axes are on these classes, the Eviscerators are on the Zealot, so that's a ton of weapon options that are now open for you to play with. The Relic blades and the Force greatswords just get more options to be viable, and they removed a lot of the stuff on the Zealot that was forcing us to play with one certain crit-focused playstyle in order to maximize our cooldown, which means you can play with these slower weapons. You can play with Thunderhammer and not be losing out on cooldown. So you could ostensibly play like Thunderhammer, or not, you could do that, but like Thunderhammer Chorus or Relic Blade Chorus, and you're not going to be like, dude, why aren't you running Dueling Sword? You're missing out on crit. You're not getting maximal cooldown. You're doing it efficiently. So yeah, like there's more ways to reach those endgame-ish viable builds because of the power increases. What we need to see is just some reining in of the weapons that are running away with it. With that being said, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. And let's go play a game.